Hello.
Yeah, that's your name.
Squirrels got me.
Big Jim.
Yeah.
Really cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
That's good that you think that of it, because that's what deer hunting typically is cold and fun.
Yesterday morning, I'm glassing up on the pass, and I see these deer moving, and I'm like, ooh, there's some deer moving. All of a sudden, I just see this person just head down, just hauling ass, wearing shorts and a t-shirt with a pack on. And I'm like, is that Tard? My dad always talks about floating through the woods like the autumn breeze.
So Robert's
when you're
the
275 pounds, I don't know how you do that, but
the Freightliner. It's just like a creeper. You're just kind of up in the corner watching what's going on down there.
Yeah.
You know.
He's like,
he's up there slapping, pissing all over everything.
Is it warm yet?
How did you know the name of the actor?
That's I know.
Why did you say his name?
Hervé Villechaize.
You know what pert near means.
If you know what pert near means and you live in America, you're a redneck too.
Welcome to the Log Talk Podcast, brought to you by Pert Near Outdoors. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode, and I think we've got a good one on the books here. And part of the reason why that's probably the case is that I am not the interviewer. So this week, Big Jim stepped in, and actually this was planned to be a Breeding and Radio episode, but the conversation went long, and there was a lot of great stuff in it, so Jimmy and I decided it would be best to actually have this be a standalone episode on its own. And so this week we have Brian Gottfried, and we have Andrew Noble, and those two guys are they are important people here in New York when it comes to the National Wild Turkey Federation, and avid outdoorsmen, both chasing birds as well as getting out and pretty much chasing whatever's in season. So what this conversation dives into is both Brian and Andrew. They went together out on a little bit of a turkey tour starting in April, and went out across the country and came back and got back here for May 1st and got into some birds. So Jimmy and I, we if you watched our live podcast we did back right before the start of the season, so right at the end of April, these guys were out in Colorado and were getting ready to head out the next morning to try to fill their tags out there. And so we finally get to hear that story because they were successful the next morning. So really great conversation. Jimmy did a good job of kind of walking through this whole journey that they've had over the last 2 months or month and a half anyway, and a lot of exciting stories to come, bird kills, so some good tips and tricks that they share. But what I really liked was about halfway through the conversation and about majority of the second half was talking a lot about what's going on, what they're seeing around New York. Andrew, he lives over in Schoharie County, so he's over on the eastern side of the state, and Brian's right here in Livingston County, so he's very in tune with what's been going on around here. He's out hunting a lot and talking to a lot of different people, and Andrew, the same, an avid outdoorsman, avid turkey hunter, and been out a lot from the sounds of it, and if not every day. So Jimmy gets into kind of what everybody's been seeing as far as kind of a lack of gobbling, not seeing too many turkeys, and just kind of getting their take on it. So these guys definitely had some good intel, some local stuff, and also talked about what some of the bigger names in turkey research, biologists and things like that, have been talking about with some of the folks at NWTF, as well as Mike Chamberlain, who's been doing some really good things and putting out some great content, kind of talking through what a lot of hunters are seeing and what's going on out there in the turkey woods. So great conversation. Another wonderful hosting job by Big Jim, and I think you'll like this one. So make sure to, if you do enjoy it, make sure to like it on whatever the platform is you have. Give us a rating, hopefully a 5-star, and it would be a huge help if you could share it on either Facebook or Instagram. Share the episode up in your story or even on your page. Just try to help us continue to grow this. We are continuing to pick up some steam, but want to have all of you out there that are listening are a huge part of the reason why we're doing this, and would love to grow the podcast listeners within our community and within our circles. So thanks again, everybody, for sticking along with us, and we're having a lot of fun with it, and it's certainly keeping us busy throughout the Corona times we're in right now. So as for Jimmy, you kind of get a gist of how Jimmy's season's been going. He talks a little bit in this podcast about it, but since we had the baby a little over a week ago, I was able to get out for an hour. The other day, I got out from 5 a.m. to I was in the woods, so it was 2 hours, 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., and somebody else came in the other side of the property and blew the birds off the roost at about 5 to 5. So that's kind of my turkey report, and things have slowed down a little bit. Had a few pictures on the trail cam, but not a whole lot there. So we will we'll let the conversation roll. Hope you enjoy this podcast. Make sure to share it and tell a friend. And also, if you want to, check out the website. Danny's continuing to build that out, pertneeroutdoors.com. And there's some pictures and stuff like that up there. Our hats are on order, so they should be coming in here probably first week or so of June. There was a little bit of a lead time on them, so I'm suspecting them to be in some part of the early part of June. So keep your eyes peeled there. And there's also some links for Camo Fire, Cabela's, Mountain Ops, a few other companies that we are doing some work with, and give you guys an opportunity to help support the podcast by shopping through those platforms. So thanks again. Have a great week. Stay healthy. Wash your hands, and keep feeding them.
Alrighty, on this episode here of Breeding Them Radio, I am hooked back up with Brian Gottfried and Andrew Noble. You guys were on our Turkey Talk live podcast there right before season, and you guys were out in Colorado together. I believe you guys both got birds in Michigan before you were at Colorado, and I think you guys shared that story already, right?
Not really.
Yeah, I don't remember if we shared the Michigan story.
I think you shared the Michigan story on the live podcast. I guess we'll just refresh real quick on it. Weren't you checking out a piece of property? You were leaving or something. It was real windy, and you were checking out the piece of property, and the birds were actually like near the road.
Yeah, by the cabin. Yep.
Yeah. So we covered that. I remember it being in that Turkey Talk one. So from there you went to Colorado. Yeah, you were definitely. So from there you guys went to Colorado, and I believe you both connected the next day in Colorado, right?
Yeah. We did some responsible recreation on the way out. I actually had a Kansas tag in my pocket previous to. So we drove 14 hours from Michigan and swung into Kansas. And in Kansas, we literally pulled in and we heard a bird gobble right there at sunrise, right out of the truck in the pull-off. And it was a mad scramble to get in on him. We worked that bird for probably, hour and a half. Had him into 74 yards, I think was the closest. He was across the public line on the private, and just couldn't call him in to the corner. But it came close that first morning. Then what do you think, Bri? How many miles we put on that day?
I wish we set a trip meter or let Onyx track us, because we drove, other than the short period of time where I was doing the video tour of a possible house that we were looking at buying. I don't know, man. We drove all day. So, yeah. But I mean, we were cruising back roads and, looking for places. So it wasn't like highway miles, but I don't know, man. We probably drove. How far is it from where we hunted that morning to where we camped? That's got to be 50 miles.
At least. I would say almost probably 60. Yeah, it's probably 50 to 60 blocks north, but we went way east. I mean, we covered a lot of ground. We saw one private land bird, and it was not looking good. I mean, to pull in and hear a bird gobble out of the truck, we said, man, this is going to, I put a hard time with stamp. Number one, Brian didn't have a tag. I said 2 days. Just give me 2 days, and then it broke the trip up out to Colorado, and I said, man, this is not gonna work out. And we were thinking about actually driving back to that bird we had found in the morning. And we got back. We actually had to do we had a meeting that night for the state board, the NWTF on New York State board. We had our first ever board meeting that was held virtually, or over the phone. So we had to log into that, and we were actually in and out of the meeting trying to roost birds. We'd get to a high point where we'd have service, and sorry, I got to plug my phone in. And then we were losing service in between, and we ended up coming all the way back to the tent, thinking we were probably going to have to go way south to hunt that bird. And we hooted across from where the tent was set up, and a bird fired down across from where we were camping, within earshot of the tent.
Nice.
And then we had another bird fire on the private north of us that evening. So we were in business, and that was really cool to leave the tent the next morning and be able to walk to a huntable bird after covering all that ground the day before. It was pretty incredible. And I don't know, tell your perspective of that morning, Bri.
Well, it was nice to not have to carry a gun for a change. I just had I carried a video camera on a tripod on the trigger sticks, and it was cool to be able to just focus on that. And looking at Onyx, we could see that this bird, I dropped a pin when we got him to gobble down in the field. I dropped a pin on Onyx about where I thought he was, and there's like a little cove in a field down below with we were up above on there was a cut bank that was wooded, and at the bottom of that there was a cove, and I had a feeling that bird was roosted kind of back in the back of that cove of this field. So we had all the time, we were pressured because that was the best option we had for a turkey that day. But we were camped right there. We had no time, we didn't have to rush driving anywhere.
Right.
So we just took our time sneaking in there. We debated even walking like a mile out of the way to ensure we didn't spook those birds. But we decided that we didn't have to. We could sneak Noble had hunted that deer before, so he knew that getting down that hillside wouldn't be too bad. So we snuck down in there early, and we got set up kind of across the field from this little cove, and it couldn't have worked out better. We used pruners to cut ourselves into cedar trees that were on the edge of the field, so we had shade, we had good backdrop, and we put a half strut Jake and a hen and a upright hen and a lay down hen, and we set those out there, and gobbling was awesome. There was multiple birds gobbling across the field from us, and when it was go time, the first bird jumped up and flew above the canopy of the woods out to our left, and I thought, uh-oh, this isn't good. We missed the mark, right? But while I'm watching that bird fly off to the left over the tops of the trees,
incoming,
all the other birds were coming at us, and I could see birds dropping into the field. It was kind of bright at daylight, so it was like against the backdrop of the woods, it was a little hard to see, but I managed to, I had the camera on record anyways, and it was kind of zoomed out, and man, this one bird landed like right next to the decoys, and as it's like backpedaling and landing, I can tell it's a gobbler. I can see the red head, and I was like, oh, this is going to end really quickly. And he just turned broadside, and I saw he just had a Jake beard, and I was like, I'm still waiting for it because we had a time constraint. He didn't want to be there. We wanted to be done that day, so I wasn't so sure he was going to shoot that Jake, and he didn't. At least
safety was off, and I let his feet hit the ground, and as soon as I was going to distinguish shoot or bird, I was going to let him touch the ground for about 2.5 seconds before he got the imaginary 9 iron that capped him right in the head. But it was just the Jaker, and honestly, I probably would have shot the Jaker, except it wasn't the dominant Jake. It turns out. The other bird, which I thought had to have been a mature bird, which flew down to the right side of the alcove and was staying with a hen in the back, which was doing the primary amount of gobbling, which had a phenomenal, what I thought was a phenomenal gobble.
Yeah, for sure.
It ended up being, as I finally started seeing the tail fan, I said, man, that's a tall feather. That's the Jake. That's the Jasper. And as he started to approach, he was right on the edge, but he was doing it. I mean, he was giving me the whole turkey show and acting really, really bossy. And I'm like, man, Jaker in Kansas might have to do it. And he was right there on the edge of probably 55. And my 12 gauge, AKA the juicer, was totally capable of juicing at that yardage. And he kind of just skirted me just a little bit. And the other thing was Brian didn't have it on camera. That was the deal breaker. I said, I'm only killing this Jaker if I can get it on vid. And he didn't quite do it for me. And there was a reason. And that's because we heard some distant gobbles, which I couldn't even tell if it was on our property or not. And I couldn't tell direction, but it turned out that they were coming. And those birds came down the edge. And Brian told me, he's like, I had at one point come up to the cedar trying to get him to film over my shoulder while I'm trying to cap this Jake. And he's like, dude, these birds are coming. Get back to your cedar. Like, so I'm scrambling back to the cedar. We're back to our original positions, and these birds are coming, and they're coming quick. And this is Kansas open ground, so we're watching them a ways. And they get down to the drainage, and I'm going, please, full give me the full fan.
I told him.
As soon as I said that out loud, Brian and I both see this Tom go into strut, and he's missing. Somebody must have tried to give him the old rage colonoscopy during the 2-week bow season, because he was missing the top 6 primaries. So when he fanned out, it was the ugliest half fan you've ever seen in your life.
Oh my God.
But he turned it with enough to where I could see a dangling beard too. But he was the dominant bird. The other bird never displayed, but he had a long beard too. So now they're coming in, and I'm like, wow, this is going to happen. But now I'm being greedy. I'm like, should I shoot the sub-dom who might have a full fan? And just because I don't want the ugly fan, this is a cool Kansas. We're hunting in a spot that it's probably a hybrid bird, so it's probably an Eastern Rio hybrid. So it probably wasn't going to be a full check on got my Rio down, but I really wanted a cool tail because it looks more Rio-y. But as they got in the dip, I lost track of which bird was which. And when they came up on the upside, neither one displayed, and they were already in range at 33, which the juicer was ready, and juice away. And we got
So which one did you end up shooting?
I got the half a fan.
That's priceless.
Yeah. And we got it all. We got a good video of it too, which is really cool.
It was really cool. Yeah. Got it on the Tacticam. Brian laid it down on the Handycam, and it was really cool. I mean, that was a hunt that just honestly, that we had a lot of fun in Michigan already, and then that one just to happen that second morning like that. We were on the road for Colorado at 9:30 with camp packed up and on the road.
That is just textbook.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. We had our peyote cigar and really savored that one that morning.
So did you guys kind of have an idea where you were going there, or were you just winging it?
I've deer hunted that area for 8 years now. But I'm still winging it. I mean, all I know is fall bird patterns out there. But what I really attributed to the issue with the bird numbers there is they had really bad flooding last year. The river ground that I hunted, the cottonwoods were the watermark is probably 20 to 25 foot up the cottonwoods in the bottom, and it looks like Mars down there. Everything's got 4 to 5 inches of silt in that entire river bottoms, and that's the brood habitat. That's where these turkeys do their thing. This is what populates the rest of those regions, because Kansas's farming practices take so much of the feed off the agriculture that there's really nothing left for the turkeys and the deer. They're very good at taking all the soybeans. all the corn, all the Milo. So it's I think Kansas dropped one bird right now, and I think that's a good thing. But it was nothing like the bird numbers we had just seen in Michigan, which were off the chain.
Yeah, it still sounds like a freaking excellent hunt.
Oh, it was. It was an excellent hunt. I mean, it was a hunt. That's what I like about it. It was very rewarding. I mean, we went from 0 to hero in 0.5.
So I mean,
that was the coolest thing about that whole trip was that, you know, we didn't just walk in and shoot a bird anywhere. Like we worked for all the birds that we got. You know, it wasn't just an easy deal. And that was the best part.
And we were hunting a mixture of public and private ground. The bird in Kansas, we were literally right on the line of a piece of private I could hunt, and the walk-in, we were right there on the line. The Michigan bird, again, we were on a piece of private we could hunt, and they were actually roosted on the public. So we had both. It was really cool mix on Brian's bird in Michigan, and my bird in Kansas, and then the drive to Colorado. It was.
So you're talking about some ag out there in Kansas. Are they doing what farmers are doing around here and just hacking all the hedgerows out, or is it not like that out there?
Everything that's tillable out there is tilled. Anything that's not tillable is the nastiest cedar, thorny, bullcrap, Sasquatchy, gnarly you've ever seen. Everything lives in those. When the sun starts to set, those little creek bottoms come alive with raccoons and badgers, freaking all kinds of crazy stuff. The possums and everything just kind of comes cranking out of those little creek bottoms, and it filters out through. It's amazing what those little creek bottoms hold.
So I don't know what your opinions are, Brian, on this. I know you're in the NWTF and you do a lot of habitat stuff or are a part of organizing it. When I see all these freaking hedgerows getting torn out around here, it is just devastating. I mean, growing up hunting around Lima, I mean, all these fields were blocked out. I mean, they're 8-10 acre fields with hedgerows in between, and you go sit in the hedgerow and the game all used them, and it broke up the field, and you could get out there and, you know, deer, especially from what I remember, you know, they'd have little secluded places because there was hedgerows and stuff, and they could use them to get out there. It just seems like now it's like everything's wide open. There's nowhere for any, you know, hedgerows are, I gotta believe, good nesting ground. So I gotta believe that's just, and with pheasants and everything else, I mean, there's just nowhere for anything to hide and live.
That's part of it. You know, they definitely provide good, you know, cover, and you know, that they, even for deer, they're good travel corridors and things like that. They make good funnels if they're, you know, set up right. But yeah, hedgerows, you know, taking hedgerows out is definitely not helping turkey populations, not helping any game populations for that matter. It helps with GPS guided farming equipment though, and
yeah, absolutely
really efficient. But you know, there's still, that's not the only thing. It's openings in general. It's early successional habitat, which you're not going to get unless you clear areas, and you know, you really need to disturb the landscape and then allow that, when that woody vegetation and everything starts to grow back, that first 10 years, that's really the important stuff, that when it comes to brood rearing, nesting, you know, raising fawns with songbirds, it's really important for their nesting and food and all that too. So, but yeah, the hedgerows getting ripped out, that definitely doesn't help matters.
Yeah, just, it seems like the hedgerows were where everything used to happen. Yeah, it was just, you know, now like the piece of property I hunt over here in Livonia for bow, it's like, I looked at the map when the guy gave me permission, and I'm like, oh my God, this field's perfect. It's got 2 hedgerows. It's like a 30-acre field with 2 hedgerows. And I go over there to try to put a tree stand up, and it's like every single one of the hedgerows is gone. All there is like a little block of woods, and the property line is right on the block of woods. So I only got a couple trees to choose from. Yeah. But it's like, you know, the deer still use the field, but I gotta believe when that was all hedgerowed out, that would have been unbelievable.
Probably would have been a little better hunting.
It's still pretty good, so I can't complain. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's just an observation I've had from the past. I wanted your opinion on. But
no, hedgerows are definitely very critical in any type of agricultural habitat. You need those those edges, those breaks, transitions, whatever you want to refer to them as. But a lot of your cottontails, that's the biggest thing for me is the cottontail habitat. You rip those hedgerows out, there's nothing left for them for the cottontails. That's I'm seeing the biggest loss of habitat for running with my beagles is loss of cottontail habitat with the removal of hedgerows.
Yeah, I mean, I get why they're doing it from a farming standpoint. You can't blame them, but you look at it from a hunting wildlife standpoint, and you're like, oh God.
yeah.
But anyways, off of that tangent, let's head off to Colorado. What happened in Colorado?
We rolled into Denver about 4 p.m. We met up with one of Noble's friends from home that lives out there. Cooked up some sausages on the grill, and then we met up with another guy that
I need to grab a pack from him too for my my wilderness extravaganza.
That's right. So we met up with this other guy that he said we could hunt his private farm camp. It's not a farm, whatever. He's got some private property that he has a camp on that he was going to let us hunt. And we couldn't get in there right away. So he pointed us towards some public land about 3 hours south. And we went down there, and immediately we were into birds. We walked in. There was one guy. We slept in the truck for about 3 hours. Andrew at least got to sleep for the 3 hours I was driving, and then the 3 hours we were parked in the parking lot.
That was the marathon drive that I was most proud of. Thanks for covering that. I was no help on that one.
So we slept in the parking area, woke up. There was another truck already there with a guy sleeping in it. You can't camp necessarily on public lands, so, or at least on the state-owned lands. So we were just basically waiting in the truck, and we got up. That guy said his plan was to sit like 200 yards from the truck and put a decoy out because he wasn't good at calling. He was just going to hope they walked by. And if you looked at the map, this first little drainage on this public land, it looks like the most obvious, easiest place to get to. So I'm not surprised that's where the pressure is. We decided to walk about as far as we could along the road, along the property line, and pick the last drainage and go up through that one. And we got to basically to the head of it where, or at least the head of the flat area. We were getting ready to ascend up this drainage, and birds gobbled right above us, like a few hundred yards away. So both
of our first Merriam's gobble experience happened just like that, and wow,
it was
really, is this really going to happen like this?
We learned some lessons quick, though. I mean, we side-hilled up the hill pretty quick, hoping to get. We figured they were going to go out to some fields they were going to work down off this hill across onto the road area, or across the road where there were some fields, and we side-hilled up to kind of get in front of them, and didn't hear them, but we were confident we were doing the right thing. We're getting around in front of them, and we got up to the edge where we could kind of hear down towards the road. And those birds were below us already, and we didn't realize it at that time, but within the next day or so, we were going to realize that Merriams don't really walk anywhere; they run wherever they go.
Very athletic birds.
Those birds. I mean, we were kind of debating whether they pitched down there from the top. I don't think they did. I think they hit the ground and just made tracks because there wasn't really anywhere a clear path to fly, and I don't know if they were necessarily in a field on our side of the road or not, but. We listened to them carrying on. There was a lot of hen talk, a lot of cutting and clucking, and fighting purrs and gobbles. And then they all just, I spotted a bird across the road in a meadow, and it was almost like they spotted him at the same time. And they all just flew across that valley onto the other side of the road, which was public land, but it was not huntable. It was, there was no access.
Non-access public lands. Yeah.
So
bummer.
We cruised around that place, and we just did the running and gunning thing. Didn't really pan out till we were heading back to the truck around noon, and there was a bird strutting across the field, and I thought, they flew across it very easily in the morning, so it might be worth trying to get that bird to come across. And I think he's probably seen that play before, because we moved in almost as close as we could, and where we had some room to set up a decoy where he'd have a visual, and we hit him with some calls, and he gobbled, but he gobbled as he walked straight away from us. So it was, it was a done deal.
Yeah, that was weird too, because he left the hen and he gobbled going right back up into the pines.
Yeah,
on the other side. But that one was just absolutely pearly white tail feather. I mean, it was just cool to sit there in glass and watch him on that hillside. It was, my first time in Colorado, and to get up on that high mesa and to see where these turkeys are living. And it was a cool entry into the public land Colorado hunt. I mean, for a non-killing hunt, I think it was a great first morning, minus the change in the parking lot. That was ridiculously cold that morning.
So cold.
So cold.
But we that afternoon we met up with the friends from Denver, and they took us over to their camp, showed us around, and we did some walking and calling there, and didn't really. We found a couple of roost tree sites, and it was windy, and then we sat down for a while, and we kind of did the nap and call scenario for like an hour, and sure enough, like a 5-pack of Jakes came in behind us silent. I thought these guys were sleeping behind me, and I looked back, and Andrew was wide-eyed, and he was giving me the motion, and I look over, and the other guy's craned around backwards, and then I just see a red head pop up right over the guy's shoulder. It was like 5 yards from him, it seemed like, and
that's close.
That we let him walk off, but we knew there were birds in the area, so that was a good thing.
That was a heart pumping though, to be sitting in the pines and just see the red softball heads coming through. Because I'm telling you, they look tall. They look like longbirds. They didn't look like jaspers. They look like solid longbirds.
Yeah. But that was that for the night, and then the next morning we went back into that same area and set up in a meadow down below where we had seen those Jakes, and didn't hear much gobbling on the roost. Couple of gobbles above us, couple of gobbles below us, and at one point we just finally heard a good gobble kind of in the same meadow that we were in, and I thought it was a good sounding gobble. Anyway, everybody else thought it sounded puny, but it was a longbeard. It came running in, and we got it on video. It popped into the little area of the meadow that we were in, and it just did it. It saw the decoy. It just strutted its way in, and it gobbled halfway to the decoy. Got it on video. I shot it when it got to the decoy. It was the most pitiful sounding gobble I've ever heard in my life. I can't even describe it. It was a whistle at best with a little bit of a trill.
It was weak. Shit was weak.
It comes through on the video, so once that's finally edited up, it'll be fun to listen to. But
it was just cool though to see that bird screaming across coming in the deeks, and it was a lot of high fives all the way around on that one
for sure.
And then it was a quick hold tight because there's more birds coming, and that was that same wolf pack of jaspers from the afternoon napping call came down in, and that they didn't want to actually mess with his flopping bird, which was surprising. Brian's bird was still flopping there. I figured that those jaspers would take full advantage coming over and putting the 1/4-inch spurs to him, but right. No dice. They ended up skirting and going up high, and about an hour and 15.
Maybe that was the longest. I feel like it happened very quickly, but it was exciting. So who knows?
A gobble came from behind us. Again, this sounded better than Brian's, but still, these Merriams have a yardbird gobble to them. I mean, it's not like our Easterns. Their shit's weak. And he came down off the mountain and he gobbled strong the whole way to every call and gobbled on his own and just came in hotter than a $2 pistol. It just came in to the other side off the ridge where we had called like the day before in the afternoon, and was on the other side of this little drainage that on the other side of the meadow. It's probably about a 45er, and the juicer ate him up.
Yeah, we didn't get much of a show with him. He kind of stepped out, and he didn't waste any time.
I wanted the bird down. And it would have been cool to see if he would have came into the deeks, but the shot was present as soon as he came across that opening. Brian wasn't quite on him, and it was. But we got the tax cam footage. But it was still we doubled on Merriam's that morning. I mean, in Longbeards, mature birds. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So did you ever move, or did you stay right in the same spot?
Same ground blind.
You were in a blind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Popped the double bowl that morning.
Nice. Yeah, if I drove that far to hunt a turkey and it gave me a shot that, I ain't waiting to see what it does with the decoys. I'm shooting.
I had a second tag. I did a draw unit and for a wilderness area. So I ended up going with my buddy and his son and trying this wilderness area. And Brian ended up hooking up with my buddy from the area. And Brian actually had luck.
Yeah, that was – I honestly didn't have much of a plan. I was going to just do a little elk scouting, which was phenomenal. These guys left the house at 3:30 in the morning to go to where they were hunting. I left with them, drove into town, got some gas, and when the sun started to come up, I just picked a road and started driving down it, and it was loaded with elk. Every field had elk in it. There was a field with over 100 elk in it, and there were some spikes still holding antlers. There were some raghorns still holding antlers. And then there were some large bulls that there was like a bachelor group of like 6 of them that had like between 12 and 24 inches of growth, new growth already.
Jeez.
And I mean, there was elk everywhere. And I continued up the road, and I saw some turkeys on the side of the road. And I got up into the top of this pass, and I had to make a video to introduce a new raffle that we were doing for the Turkey Federation. I was like, what better place than like some snow-capped mountains in the background, and this would be awesome. So I just pull over on the, it's all BLM. I just pull over on the side of the road. I'm in this big meadow at the top of this pass, and I got my phone out. Even though I'm in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, I feel really self-conscious about doing the whole selfie thing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I get out of my truck, I hit record, and turkeys are gobbling down below me, like in this little strip of woods in the meadow below me. And I was like, oh man, I got to hurry up and get this done. I'm going to put my camouflage on. I'm going to grab the camera. I'm going to go down there and film these Merriams doing their thing. And as I'm standing there looking at my camera, trying to introduce this raffle, here comes a pickup truck. And I was like, oh, this is embarrassing. So I pretend like I'm getting something out of the back seat of my truck. And I don't know if it was a warden or just just a state agency or federal worker or whatever. But I don't know, there was a shotgun mounted in between the seats of the pickup truck. And I was
probably just a local.
It was definitely an employee of the government. So I said, I went over and said good morning to him, and I said, there's turkeys gobbling right over the hill here. He's like, and he knew like the wood line where they were was private land. He's like, you're not hunting turkeys, are you? I said, no, I tagged out yesterday. I'm just doing some scouting, and I was doing a video to introduce a raffle that I'm holding. He's like, all right, no problem. And then, so that kind of scared me off of going down there to video those birds. But not that I would have gone on the private land. I'd have just tried to call them onto the BLM.
Right.
But he also told me, I told him about all the elk and that I was just trying to do a little elk scouting at the same time. He's like, it takes like 18 points to draw this unit, right? I was like, oh, that makes total sense now. But I don't know if it really takes 18, but that makes sense that it's a difficult unit to draw because it was looking pretty promising from what I had seen. There was no shortage of elk in that area, but it was within an hour of daylight. So shortly after that, I had gone back to town, and I got a text message from his buddy Cody And he's like, hey, I got a turkey tag if you want to hunt. And I was like, you just name the place, man. I mean, if you want, if you got a place, cool, I'll meet you there, wherever it is. And he said, yeah, I got a buddy that hunts a ranch, and he dropped some pins. These birds have been coming off of BLM onto the ranch where he hunts. So he hooked us up with some spots where we could go up on the BLM and maybe get into these birds. So he dropped a pin on Onyx for me, and it was about a 3-hour drive. And I got there, and he had about a 3-hour drive also. And we met at 3:30. We drove up this BLM road and got into where we wanted to. It was the shortest walk, the least amount of climbing and the shortest walk to get close to these meadows on the private ground. And of course, we get there, and there's like 3 cars and a camper, and there's a pile of guys sitting in camouflage with their guns just sitting around camp. So I was like, all right, they're good on them. They're in the right spot, right? They're
right.
hunting this public land where these birds probably are roosting and going down to the meadows on private. So we had 2 pins to work with, and the second pin was a ways away. So we just went back down the road a ways and kind of split the difference, and just to see what happened. We were more in like, let's just do a little scouting tonight, and then we'll hunt hard tomorrow. And so we hiked up to with a good listening spot on the top of this ridge, and I fired a call off, and he said, I think I heard a bird down there. And I was like, all right, I believe you. I didn't hear it, but I was also calling, so let's go. So we bombed down off this hill, and it's thick, like it's difficult to walk through. And we're seeing plenty of elk sign, by the way, which was cool. And as we get further down the hill, I find an elk shed. It's an old elk shed, but I'm like, cool, man, I found an elk shed. Of course, it's the day before, or 2 days before you can actually, I think May 1st you could pick them up.
May 1st.
It was a few days before. And I was fine with it. I took a picture with it. I set it on the ground, but as I looked around, I said, hey, it's actually pretty open here. Let's just sit here and listen. We can kind of see a little ways. That we could see this little finger ridge out in front of us, and I suspected the birds were roosting there based on the topography and the relation to these open meadows. So I'm like, this would be cool, this is a good spot. So we sat there. I called maybe once every 10, 15 minutes, not aggressively at all, just, maybe it was really windy, so I was using a box call. And like an hour goes by, and we were talking. I'd only met this guy for like, maybe a half hour beforehand, and Andrew and him were catching up when that was happening. So I didn't, we haven't really talked. So we're sharing stories and, doing what you do when you meet somebody else that hunts, and talking about elk hunting mainly. And all of a sudden we stopped talking for a few minutes just to listen. The wind had kind of died down, and he just said turkeys. And I'm expecting to be like out in front of me, but like my instinct when he said turkeys was to kind of turn my head to the left, and I said where, and as I turned my head to the left, I see a red head like 10 yards behind us.
Oh Jesus.
I was like, oh my God. We sat against 2 pine trees with a downed pine tree next behind them, and we just had the perfect backdrop, man. And there was a 4-pack of Jakes, and on the way in he said, just so you know, I have no problem shooting a Jake. And I was like, that's fantastic, because this is just a bonus hunt for me, as whatever makes you happy, And as soon as I saw them, I could see in my peripheral vision, he was already rolling off to his side and shouldering his gun. And I mean, he shot one, and it was a done deal. Birds came in silent behind us. I don't know how they got as close as they did, other than it was windy. And so it was cool, man. That bird died within like 10 yards of a elk rub and about 10 yards of that elk shed in the other direction. So we took some pictures with that as the background, and we hiked out of there. We grabbed a case of beer, and we found some BLM land that sat up above the town, and we drove up there. It was legal to camp on BLM land, so we pulled up there, and it was like sitting next to the Hollywood sign. We were just looking down over this town. We had a few beers, shared a lot more hunting stories, and slept in our trucks that night. Pretty sure I left my trigger stick sitting on the ground there. And,
never found them. Huh?
No, they're gone. Because they're expensive. But Yeah, so then I left there and I drove like 3.5 hours down into New Mexico to pick Andrew up. They actually had to go into New Mexico to get to where they were hunting. So I went and picked him up in New Mexico and we drove home.
Yeah. I went and tried to hunt birds at 10,000 feet, and birds weren't up there yet. But I saw some really cool elk country. I think if I ever do that wilderness hunt again, I need to be about 2 weeks later than I was. But it was just really, really cool to hunt turkeys that way, to take the 2.5 to 3 hours to hike in for a turkey. It was
pretty crazy.
It was crazy stuff. And just the scenery and that drainage that we were hunting up there, it was incredible scenery. I did hear some birds. I roosted them that night. They were about 2,000 vertical down the drainage, and it would have taken me easily 2 hours to get out of there once I got the bird down, if I got down to the bird. And then I still had to hike out, and it was just too much work. So I went halfway down that drainage the next morning, and I box called my heart out, thinking that these Merriams, I heard they'll come a country mile if they hear you, and I couldn't hear them. I don't think they could hear me. I found a turkey beard. That was a first for me. Something had killed a tom, but I stumbled across the random turkey beard. that was different.
It wasn't cut off. It was just laying.
It was it was kind of like balled up, but it had been detached by something, I'm sure, that had a Merriam's Tom meal right there in the meadow.
Yeah.
It was, but yeah, it was a really, really cool experience. But that was the only tag that we didn't fill on the trip.
That's incredible.
But it was, honestly, it didn't matter. I was totally okay hiking. Just on the hike in, I had already been okay with not killing a turkey on that trip. When I hiked in, just to experience it alone and to do a turkey hunt that way was just incredible.
That's awesome. So then you journeyed all the way back to New York.
Saw Boone and Crockett antelope.
For sure we did. For sure.
That was a giant. We would have turned around, but we were 23 hours from home, so we kept driving.
Yeah.
We were going to pick another state, but honestly, Brian had just purchased a house while we were gone.
You're moving, huh?
A little bit, yeah. Not moving far, but yeah. We put the offer in the day that I left. So if you've ever bought a house, you can imagine how that went.
Oh yeah.
I was a little stressed out for him.
Sight unseen.
Really?
They wouldn't let me go look at it. So yeah. It's
because of the whole COVID thing.
Yeah. We put it in the offer that if they accepted the offer, they had to let us walk through it within 3 days. So Jess went and walked through it, and I sent my dad in my place to look at the some of the things with a critical eye for, like, repairs, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I don't even know if that was really legit. I'm the way the rules go, but whatever. That was part of my deal. Like, I wanted to know what was damaged and what wasn't. So it all worked out. We're in the process, but it's pretty much a done deal. But yeah, Andrew did a lot of driving. I'm pretty much a driver when I'm doing road trips.
We split it up nice. I think we complement each other well. It was our first real hunting have really got to do together too. Yeah. So it was just.
I wouldn't have given up the driver's seat as much, but I had to have my laptop open and signing papers and doing things like that. So it was good to have somebody that was willing to drive to lighten the load a little bit.
Yeah, that's crazy to try to buy a house while you're on the road.
Yeah,
especially now. I mean,
I kept saying, if anybody questions my my desire to turkey hunt, that there's a feather in my hat. I'm willing to be on the road and make that happen. So yeah, a little crazy, but
Yeah, and honestly, I was planning on doing this trip solo, and it would have been tough solo. So,
Yeah.
and normally in a non-COVID year, Brian would have been doing banquets and not been able to travel with. So it worked out for our trip, and it couldn't have gone any better. It really, truly couldn't have gone any better.
Yeah, it was awesome.
You gotta take the positive where you can out of this.
Oh yeah, definitely. I knocked 3 states off for my U.S. Slam, and Brian got his first out-of-state turkeys.
Yep.
Perfect. So what happened? What's going on here in New York, Andrew? It looks like you are just absolutely slaying turkeys between you and people you are taking. And Brian, I know I've been talking to you some. I think is it girlfriend or wife, Jess?
Girlfriend.
So your girlfriend Jess got a Jake opening day, and then me and you have been talking a little bit, both struggling, and you connected yesterday.
Yep.
So Andrew, I don't know what the hell you're doing, but you don't seem to be struggling.
I will be totally honest. I am struggling to find birds, not struggling to kill them, struggling to find them. But 11 New York birds have hit the dirt since I've been back.
Jesus Christ. So what part of New York are you in?
I'm in the great county of Schoharie.
Okay.
It used to be what I would call the turkey mecca, but this year it's not the turkey mecca.
No. I spent 2 days down there and never heard a gobble.
Huh.
I partially because I was lazy. A spot that I always first of all, I slept in a couple hours the first morning because it was 25 degrees and super windy. And Andrew had told me there's no birds up on the hill where I hunt, so I wasn't terribly enthusiastic. But we rolled out of there about 8:30, I think, and lo and behold, like literally, I was driving through the property that I can hunt. I was in there for a minute and I saw 4 birds. So 2 of them were hens. I'm not exactly sure what the other 2 were. I think I screwed up moving in on them. And then when we left that setup, we were driving back out, and I literally said to Jess as I hit the stop sign, I said, what self-respecting turkey would be out in the open right now anyways? And I looked to my right, and there were 2 longbeards crossing the road.
Oh, geez.
Right. And I can hunt both sides of the road there. So we ran around and got in on them, and I glassed over to where they were before I dropped into this, this little hole. And they looked like they were going back across the road. So I went back to the truck, drove around again, and as I drove past where they were going back to where I just was. They were going over the hill. They were already in the bottom. So I called Andrew. I was like, hey, man, can you just come up here and, just keep an eye out? Let me know if I bump them out of this woodlot, because it's this little island of woods. It's surrounded by fields, and it's difficult to get into. And I've never killed a turkey out of them, but they're always in there. And so he pulled up and parked where they were on the road. I go back around. Jess and I get out of the truck, and
I had a dead turkey in my truck too, by the
way. We're maybe 100 yards from the truck, and Jess goes, hey, look, and we're busting these birds out of the field below us. They acted like Miriam's that day. They were running. They weren't taking their time. I would have never guessed they could have made it that far, but we broke the flock up, and the 2 gobblers flew to the right into a big chunk of woods. The 2 hens flew back the way they came into that little island of woods, and a lone Jake just ran up through the field into that island of woods. And I thought, this is a perfect situation. This is a fall run.
But we had tracking snow.
We did have tracking snow, but that didn't come into play just yet. I ended up going into the big group of woods where the gobblers were. I've killed a lot of birds in that woodlot. I kind of had an idea what they would do. So we got in there, called, nothing. And I mean, we gave them a good while before we gave up. And when I gave up, I didn't just walk out of there. I went over to where they landed on the side of the field, and I tracked them. And those birds hit the ground and walked at an angle straight through that property to the back property line. Never once stopped. They never veered. They just walked a straight line straight through that property. one of the birds, I was following one set of tracks, and at one point the second bird joined back up with him and then disappeared again. And I wasn't real concerned about which track I was following. I just was following one of them. And I tracked them right through the property, and they went down. They were getting into a nice little hole where they were secluded by the wind, but they didn't have to go that far to get secluded from the wind. I think they that was their response to being spooked, was they need to find a new place. So they bailed, and they bailed hard. And by that point, it was getting close to noon, so we were done. But
those 2 LBs are still on the hill too, by the way.
I'm sure they are, and I'll come back and get them. I'll be back to get them.
They weren't there until BG came into town, and I'm telling you, you brought the good juju back to the hill.
Maybe so.
But I'm fresh out of tags, so they're safe until I find another tag recipient, tag holder. No, I've been struggling to find birds, that's for sure. This morning, I got my butt kicked today. I set up where I left 2 longbeards the other day after killing 1. I had 2 hens out there yesterday. I figured I didn't roost there the night before, but I came in this morning and 5 hens pitched out of the roost into that field and fed across the field with no gobbler in tow. Just bizarre. There was a bird gobbling deeper in the woods, and he gobbled going away from me-ish. It was so deep in the woods, I couldn't really tell direction of travel, other than it didn't get closer to me. And then I struggled the rest of the day. I worked in 3 more mouthy hens at another spot. But today was a rough day, considering the weather felt pretty good. Wind was down. I hit a lot of good spots. Spots that I had a lot of confidence in today. So today was a little defeating.
So what happened with your first couple of birds?
My first bird was about as most unorthodox as you could get. We'll go quickly back to opening day. Opening day, because I was gone and I already had some killing under my belt, I took my fiance out with intentions of killing the local longbird to try to really rank up in the Pertinier contest right off the bat. I already scouted for spurs and longbird contingency and figured he was a player, and made sure I put Leisha in the driver's seat though, and it's her bird. So we set up, and opening day with the rain, he didn't fire until about 7 o'clock. He must have roosted or been quiet in the roost. 7 o'clock he fired. He was coming in, had a mouthy hen cut us off, drag him off. And about an hour later, the direction he was going, the neighbor capousal. Had to console my fiance for a minute or 2 as we figured he had just got capped, and we left the property. Just so then we'll go back. So that was opened on a Friday. Got mine on May 6th, which was what, a Wednesday? Thursday. Wednesday. I got a call from the landowner across the street saying that Tom was fighting with his rooster in the dooryard. And then his healer, just let his healer out, and his healer had treed the gobbler in his hickory tree. And I said, it was 10:30. I was just coming in from a hunt. I grabbed my son, and we went down to the bottom of the hill. I said, I got to see this. And here's this Tom 200 yards away on the hickory limb, full fanning out, rocking, doing the old weeble wobble on the branch. We watch him for about 5 minutes, and he pitches down in this tall grass. I said, all right, Slate, here we go. And I grabbed my Reaper decoy and my vest, and we went up on top of the hedgerow, looking down on where that bird pitched down in. I can see across that whole flat. And this is the only hedgerow he can travel to not be out in the open. I think we're in good shape. 20 minutes go by, he doesn't show. So we start our creep down. And as I get up there, I call my 7-year-old down to me. And then I get up, and I call my 7-year-old down to me. But yeah, I get up to the hedgerow. I look down, I can see a bronze back and a red head hunkered down in the tall grass. So I keep Slate posted up, and I make my approach. When I hit the 50 mark, I'm already thinking about hitting him with the joker. My joker being my 20 gauge, by the way. And So I started my slow approach with the Reaper. I get the 30, and all of a sudden he pops up and does the Roadrunner, and I just pulled the Joker up and dumped him at like 32 yards right there. It was the bird that my neighbors had wounded on opening day. His both wings had damage. One tail feather obviously had a pellet ripped through, and I found some number 5 copper plated in his thigh, which was heavily damaged on the right side. I have pictures of this bird. I knew it was him, but it was really cool. I got him, but it was definitely a mercy kill. It definitely was unorthodox, but still proudly put my tag on him. Wasn't the traditional turkey hunt I want to experience, but I'm glad I was able to put the bird down. And honestly, his breast meat was still good. So I was happy.
Perfect.
Brian,
so
you want to tell your story?
Yeah,
Brian, what happened with you guys opening day?
Didn't have any luck roosting birds. We set up in a spot where we deer hunt, and we've always seen birds there. And the past 2 years, I've taken my youth hunters youth weekend to this property and killed turkeys. And Jess killed her longbeard opening day or the second day in the same spot. So had high confidence that we'd probably run into a bird there. While I was out on our trip, I had gotten some calls from people that were driving down the road and were alerting me that the birds were out in this one field in case I needed to know that for taking a youth hunter out, which the New York youth season was while we were out on our trip, this is the first year I haven't done that, and it was kind of weird, but at the same time it was a rare opportunity. So anyways, we went in there opening day blindly, set up a blind, and my dad and Jess and I were sitting in there, and no gobbling on the limb whatsoever. And I was starting to already run through all the different scenarios of how the rest of the day was going to play out, and just happened to look through the one side of the blind, and I just saw a full fan with a white head in the middle of it. And I was like, Strutter coming towards us. And they were just like, yeah, right. And I'm like, no, look. And that's when he started gobbling, and he just marched right down the field. He was probably 40 yards at the closest. Unfortunately, Jess was going to be the first shooter that day because she had to work the rest of the weekend. And she was on the left side of the blind. The bird came from the left side. She just couldn't get her gun up and situated right to be able to shoot this bird at the time he was closest, right? So she was waiting for him to take a couple more steps, and it would have worked out. And then, of course, he took a couple too many steps, and he was past her shooting ability or the window where she could shoot. And now he's quartered. I don't know if he didn't like something with the decoys or what happened exactly, but he kind of quartered away from us, and he got out there to like the 50-yard range. And I was like, Dad, you'd better pick your gun up and shoot this thing. And so he picked his gun up, and I told him, just wait. I'll get him to stop tell me when you're ready, and I'll stop him. So I could hear his safety click off. He didn't tell me he was ready, but I knew he was ready. And so I cut real hard, and this bird, rather than stopping, it spun around and gobbled, like triple gobbled. And one of his gobbles was like the never-ending gobble. I don't know if you guys have seen the Can't Stop the Flop video that Michael Waddell put out, but like the first bird on that video just has this never-ending gobble. This bird did that. And I do have it on video, which is awesome. And the next moment wasn't so awesome because he turned to leave, and I haven't been able to like slow the video down enough. Maybe I can do it in the editing software, but he tucked his head to strut right as my dad shot, but I think he also took a step, and long story short, the bird got out of there alive, and I'm pretty confident there wasn't any shot in the bird. The next frame of the video just looks like all the rain and dew getting blown off the grass and behind it. So we're all bummed out, and we left that property and we started the run and gun technique on a different property, and not hearing anything, got into an area where I've routinely worked birds, and sure enough, we heard a distant gobble, and I said, I'm pretty sure it's a Jake. And we got all set up, put a couple decoys out, and I called again, and the bird gobbled, and I said, I'm pretty sure it's a Jake. And Jess said, well, I don't know if I want to shoot a Jake. And I was like, well, you've only killed 2 turkeys in your lifetime before. There's nothing wrong with shooting a Jake. You should, if you want to shoot it. But it sounds like they're coming. And seconds later, these 2 Jakes just burned it in there. They came across this little opening and worked right into the decoys. There was nothing between us and the decoys, but anybody that's had a couple of gobblers infatuated with their decoys, you can get away with a little bit of movement. And she, like an expert, I've always been impressed. This is her 3rd year of turkey hunting, and from day one, she's literally been, better than most first timers with her ability to move on turkeys. And like, she knows how to sit still well. She knows how to be quiet walking through the woods. She's got it. Like, she's a natural at it. And again, I said, you move your gun slow and steady. You just pick one and pull the trigger. And sure enough, like, she did exactly like I would have hoped. And she just got her gun up real smooth and steady. And she picked the front one and waited for the back one to clear and pulled the trigger and shot him. And it was awesome. And she looked at me right afterwards. She's like, my heart was racing just as fast as the bigger bird. So her first bird had like an 11.5 inch beard, 1.25 spur. It was a slammer, like, bird of a lifetime. And then the bird she shot last year was, I literally, here it is right here. I was getting ready to put it on the mount. Like, that's her 2nd turkey ever. That's no slouch.
No.
And so she got it. She understood that, turkey hunt's a turkey hunt. And so we had a good day. We got a bird. And then I worked a couple of birds the next couple days that gobbled good on the roost and then were fairly quiet, but they both days, the 2nd and 3rd day, the bird would gobble occasionally, but he was clearly henned up. And I think one of those days, I had a hen come in strutting and gobbling. I got video of that I put on
that was awesome
page.
Yeah, that's wild.
We called her in, and then we let her walk off, and then we walked like 150 yards, and a bird gobbled out in a field, and we set up in the woods, and he wasn't really coming in. He actually came in about 40 yards, but didn't present a shot, and then he ran across the field, gobbling and strutting away from us. And I couldn't figure out what was going on, but that mouthy hen that was strutting and gobbling, she didn't gobble or strut anymore, but she came back cutting and yelping, and I was calling, she was calling, my friend that was with me was calling, and that bird turned around and strutted back in, but again, just didn't get close enough for a shot. Went in there and worked him the next day with my dad, and he gobbled good on the roost and then shut up on the ground. But if I let him go for like 15 minutes and I cut real hard, he'd gobble. And I ended up calling in that same hen. She just did a bunch of yelping and purring. And I thought that we finally got that bird to break, and he gobbled once about half distance. So again, I just was being quiet. I felt like we were in the right spot to kill him. And he gobbled again. He was behind a down tree just on the other side of the decoys. And I thought, here we go. This is going to happen. And I wasn't sure which side of that down tree he was going to go to. The next time he gobbled, he was off to the right. And then he never gobbled again. And I thought, I walked out of there kind of bummed out. I figured he either saw me. I turned my head to kind of throw a call out into the field behind me. My dad might have moved. We didn't know what happened, but I was pretty sure he saw us. But then after I think I was telling the story to Andrew, and I was like, oh, dude, it makes total sense. The day before, when that mouthy hen finally, she didn't really want anything to do with them, but when they ended up in the same spot, they both went silent and they walked off. And then sure enough, that next day where that hen went, she kind of stopped calling when I stopped calling. And that bird, the last time he gobbled, he was right there. And I didn't think about that, but I think that's what happened. I think he met up with her and just wandered off. And I was on that property yesterday when I killed that bird. I can't even begin to say that with any certainty that it was the same bird. It was in a totally different spot, all alone yesterday, gobbled like crazy. And I heard him the day before gobbling from the road. The guy I was going to hunt with, he didn't end up coming, so I opted to not go in the woods by myself. My girlfriend Jess had been telling me that she wanted to see me shoot a turkey, because every time we hunt, I make her the shooter or my dad's the shooter. So
right.
So I didn't want to go in by myself and go after that bird. If he was gobbling, he was in a piece of property nobody else is hunting. I felt pretty good about it. So we went in there yesterday, and we expected him to be across the property line, and we're going to have to work our butts off to get him in. And we sat down just waiting for that to readjust once we heard him. And he was 70 yards from us, gobbling on the limb. I never made a call until he hit the ground. I watched him fly down. He hit the ground. I called once. He answered. I called again. He answered and sounded like he was going further away. That gave me the opportunity to switch trees and turn around so I'd actually be able to shoot the bird. I told Jess right away, I was like, you're going to have to kill this turkey today because I can't get around. He was way too close. But when he sounded like he was going away, I made the move, and it worked out. And I called one more time and got my gun up. And if he had come to the right side of a blowdown, Jess would have shot him. If he came to the left, I would have shot him. And he came to the left. I saw his white head popping through, and he stopped right in my first shooting lane. I already had my gun trained on, and I let him have it. It was it was like a 40, maybe 45-yard shot, a little further than I would have wanted to, but it happened so fast. I was like, oh, I have a shot here, and I've patterned my gun. I know that I can kill a bird at 40 yards. So I did. And it was awesome. It was over by 6:04.
That's awesome.
I liked Andrew's. He picked up the Dave Owens cigar smoking tradition after you kill a bird, and I didn't realize it, but I've always been so gung ho about like, all right, we got one on the ground. Let's go find the next one. We only have 31 days to do this. I want to make the most of every day. And so I'm always like, pick it up, pictures, tags. I'm good about taking pictures. I have some friends that don't even want to take pictures. But it was cool. I had a pack of cigars in my vest, so Jeff and I just sat up against a stump and smoked a breakfast cigar, and we took our time and got some good pictures and celebrated it. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, you always got to take a little bit of time. You always got to take a little bit of time to enjoy it.
I always do, but I usually do it at 12:01 when I can't hunt anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with appreciating a turkey on your tailgate, but
right.
This year there just hasn't been the birds. I do a lot of my turkey hunting down where Andrew lives, and I used to have a lot of land down there. I'm losing it, but I just had so much land to hunt. I could hunt all day till noon every day, and not even hit the same spot sometimes in a weekend. And there were birds all over the place. That's not happening anymore. So, aside from the fact that I don't feel like I need to kill any extra turkeys this year. And, I wasn't in a rush, and I haven't been in a rush in any of these birds that we killed this year. It was really cool to be able to kick back and relax and reminisce and talk about it. And, I think I'm going to stick with that no matter what the situation is from here on out.
Definitely.
No, it's definitely nice to hang the bird and take the time and reflect on the hunt and really take it in for a second. Because I don't know, this the adrenaline. I've always, and wanted to just get back to the truck or get to that next bird, and taking the time to just and even if you're not a cigar smoker, to just find some way of just taking that time to sit and reflect on the hunt and the success. And I mean, it's a lot of 4 a.m.s or earlier, and a lot of sweat, blood, and tears and the stuff.
This year has definitely been the hardest I've ever had to work at it, and I still don't even feel like I'm close. So to watch,
you're close, dude. I tell everybody that success is a it's a factor of time invested, right? Like
true. Stacking the odds.
As long as you don't give up, you're going to have an opportunity that the statistics are in your favor if that's the case. And that I'm not talking about not hunting 1 day or 2 days. I'm talking about like when you go out and hunt till noon. If you don't have a place that you can walk a lot, you don't have enough acreage. All you need is a bird on the limb. If you've paid any attention to some of these Turkey Tuesday postings that I've been sharing from Michael Chamberlain, or any of the cocktails and conservation talks that they've been doing on the NWTF Facebook page and YouTube channel,
Good
that all
stuff.
this research, it is awesome stuff, and the best ones are coming up. We're this week on this coming Wednesday. They're going to be talking about the decline in the turkey population, and there's one more after that. I don't know what it's going to be, but I don't know when you're going to post this. So that's Wednesday the 20th. Make sure you turn into the NWTF Facebook page or YouTube channel. But
that'll definitely be an interesting one to catch with all the talk going on about that and the different podcasts with, it might be Mike Chamberlain that's been on several different podcasts.
He has been. He was just on a Hunting Public one. He's been on the Meat Eater podcast recently. Yeah. I think he just recently decided to fire up his social media and start doing these Turkey Tuesday posts, and that's really gained a lot of traction, and rightfully so. The guy's done some amazing research, and it's eye-opening. He's not the only turkey biologist out there. That Brett Collier from Louisiana, he's in the same boat, and they do a lot of work together. They're doing these talks on the Facebook page together, but they definitely have their finger on the pulse of what's going on, and they're the leading experts. So awesome stuff. But one thing that they've reiterated, which a lot of us already know, but we tend to not think about or we don't want to do it because it's either it seems lazy or we're just not patient enough. And that's that a lot of times these birds, the gobblers, will return hours later to where they heard a hen to look for her, to seek her out after they're done with their normal morning routine. So you don't have a spot where you can hunt all day. You need to just hang tight, man, take a nap at the base of the tree or leave and come back. Maybe not leave, but go to a different area of the property and come back and check on it. But it's worked for me in the past, not on purpose. Like I've hunted a big piece of property and I'm working my way back to the truck, and I get back to the truck and there's a bird where there wasn't a bird before.
So that's exactly last Friday. I hunted up around Avon, and then I went down to camp after the quick morning hunt. I went down to camp. I was there by like 8 when this freaking guy that's been driving down the field with his pickup truck and sitting in the truck and calling. He was driving out of there as I was putting my camo on up at the top of the woods. And he was like, I wouldn't even bother going down in there. I'm like, well, I'm not sitting in a truck, so I'm going to go wander. But
good.
So I went down and started walking and calling. And I went probably over a mile, maybe a mile and a half down the ridge, hit the property line, hung out for a little bit, started back. I was maybe a quarter of the way back. And I switched calls, threw in a mouth call. I was standing over a big valley. And I was like, I'm just going to freaking rip on this mouth call over this valley and see what happens. And it's funny because it's been so long since I heard a gobble that I wasn't even expecting one. And the freaking thing hammered back, and I'm like, holy shit, where was that? So then, I'm sitting there listening, and he hammers right again. And I'm like, holy shit, that is right on the ridge behind me. And I dove around, set the camera up, and started filming. I think I called one more time, and he hammered right back. And it was like one of those deals, like 11 o'clock. I'm like, this thing's running to me on the tee. And I'm just watching the ridge, and he's not coming. And I'm like, what the hell happened? And I call, and he gobbles again, but he's like 200 yards away facing the other direction. And I'm like, Jesus. So I call again, nothing. So I gave it like 10 minutes. And then I just picked my shit up and started following him. And I had him gobbling again at noon, but he just absolutely wanted nothing to do with coming into it. So, but that, like you were saying, you're moving along calling. I'm coming back to a spot that I already called at, and that bird hammered. And that's like the only bird that I've had call so far this year, like answering to me. And that was a spot that I went through like an hour and a half before, and he probably heard me when I called there the first time.
Well, you got his number now.
Jimmy, how are those black flies up there in the Adirondacks?
Actually, when I was up there last weekend, it was snowing, so I didn't have to deal with them.
Yeah. I didn't know if I got pounded by the black flies today on my 5-head there. It was pretty aggressive. They're getting nasty.
Yeah. So what do you guys make
We
of
should
it?
just feel fortunate.
the slow year
that
here.
it's taken this long.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the ups and downs of it in all directions. But what do you guys kind of make of the start of the slow year? You think it's population, or you think they're off breeding and not playing so much?
Honestly, I don't have a hypothesis right now to really. I don't know. I would just like to say predation. I mean, I think, but if it was really a lot of predation or a lot of disease,
I'll be right back, guys. Sorry.
Turkeys have feathers. You would see feathers, somewhere in the woods, somewhere. I don't know, man. It's like I've been telling everybody, turkeys can hunt. They can hide their gobble. They can hide themselves. They can't hide their sign. I'm walking a lot of ridges. I'm not seeing a scratching.
I'm not either.
So if you're not seeing the sign, but where there is turkeys, I will say they're in very concentrated right now in numbers that they shouldn't be. But we all know Mother Nature has been a bipolar, this year, and we're a couple weeks behind. I'd say at least 10 days behind. I mean, even in Western New York, usually you guys are leafed out way ahead of me. And Brian's pictures the other day, I'm like, wow, you guys are about in the same boat as I am right now.
Yeah.
The Hudson Valley's a little bit more greened up down in the Hudson Valley, but we're behind, way behind.
It's even funny here where I live. I mean, trees are budding, they're starting to leaf. I go down to camp, it's a half an hour away up in the hills a little bit, and there's not a bud on a tree yet. So it's like, normally that's May 1st. And we're at May 15th, South, and there's nothing there.
In camps in Naples, right down south of you?
Yeah.
And there's no buds down there.
It's barren. There's no undergrowth, nothing right now.
I'm telling you right now, I with my success I have had, if I had some leaf cover, I'd have probably 4 or 5 more birds dead right now. The open woods have saved the lives of many a turkey this year already. I'm waiting for leaf out. Leaf out will let me slip into some of these birds that have been roosting on these wide open flats where I can't get tight to their roost setups because they have so many hens right now. Some of these dominant birds I'm hunting. I do believe the second half is going to be turkey season. I don't think we've really seen turkey season yet. And I think I've told Brian that a bunch of times. We haven't seen turkey season yet.
Yeah, I would strongly agree with that. And I keep on drawing conclusions on whether they're ahead or behind, and I've given up because it seems like every time I guess something, it's wrong. And it's just like, we're going to have to watch the next couple of weeks and see how it plays out. I know there's birds around. I know they're here, but just getting on is another topic. So,
yeah.
Can I chime in about the behind or ahead deal?
Absolutely.
I mean, this is the scientific side of me coming out, but everybody's always speculating when it comes to weather and all this stuff. And what it comes down to is it's photo period, right? Same thing with the deer rut, and people will hate on me for that too, but that's the real deal, right? That's what triggers hormones. That's what makes things happen in the breeding cycle, as well as leaves coming out. When the leaves change in the fall, it's all photo period related, right?
Yeah.
And certainly the temperature and stuff can sway things a day or two, or some really bad weather will sway things a little bit either way. But I mean, every year turkeys are strutting and gobbling their heads off, in late February, early March. They're doing it, right? And the season is set so that it starts at the peak of incubation. What that means is that the majority of the hens that are going to nest are sitting on nests on May 1st.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's a matter, I don't think it's a matter of them being ahead or behind due to it being cold. I think that, and Andrew and I have talked about this, and I'm sorry if you said this while I stepped out for a second, but I think that because it's been cold, bugs haven't been hatching like they normally would, and so birds aren't using fields like they normally do.
Right.
So you're not seeing them in the fields as much. Do I think that there's just as many turkeys as last year? No, absolutely not. What's up, Lena? I think we're not seeing as many birds because there's less bugs in the fields right now because it's been unseasonably cold. But
Yeah, I'll put on.
so the other thing is, I do think there are less birds. It's a product of we haven't had 2 consecutive years of good recruitment, good nesting, good brood rearing conditions. We haven't had 2 years in a row in the past 20 years in New York. Like this turkeys don't have a lot going for them, right? And that's kind of been the overall theme to these talks that Michael Chamberlain and Brett Collier and Jason Lupartis have been doing on the NWTF stuff. But
yeah,
it's just looking at it from a scientific perspective. Like we have less birds this year, and is it because of predation? Yes. Is it because of habitat? Yes. Is it because of weather? Yes. Like there's no one thing, right? And I think that the lack of gobbling, I think it has to do with all these factors. There's less birds. I don't think the cold is a factor. Maybe rain and wind is a factor, but I think that because there's less birds, the gobblers have more hens, and they don't need
right.
to, right? And if you listen, I've been learning along with everybody else on these talks that they've been doing on Facebook, and I think just in the last one they were talking about how, well, maybe it was a couple times ago, how turkeys breed using the term is an exploded lek, right? So these males will set up shop, even though they're kind of all from the same core group. They set up shop adjacent to each other, and sometimes that gobbling is to tell those other gobblers, hey, I'm over here, you're over there, just to let you know. And it's also for displaying and attracting mates. But when those gobblers all have hens and they don't have to gobble to attract the hens, and they're not gobbling as much, if the one bird doesn't gobble, there's no reason for the next bird over to gobble, because they don't. Right. They have their own areas. They're content in doing their own thing. And maybe I'm missing the mark a little bit on that, but you understand what I'm saying is that there's less birds, and those birds that are here have their breeding groups already established, and maybe those neighboring or adjacent gobblers, they're far enough away where they're not hearing it, or they don't need to hear it. So there's just less gobbling in general, and unfortunately that makes it really tough to hunt. But
yeah, very difficult. Yeah. I mean, I had a trail cam picture, in April of beautiful Tom, and I think he had 10 to 12 hens with him.
Yep.
Wow. And that was the first thing I thought. I'm like, that bird's gonna be about impossible to hunt. But it's just a lot of factors that you don't know exactly what's causing it. But I gotta believe if they're not gobbling, it's probably because they're preoccupied with their women.
Yep. So. I have a bird that you've probably seen driving around that will not gobble. He you can see him every night. I've set up on him, and he won't gobble in the morning. He's got 3 hens with him, and he's going to be very difficult to hunt. I ran into another guy that was pulled over on the side of the road watching him go to roost, and I thought for sure that what do you got going on over there, Noble?
The roost tonight's not going to happen, I don't think.
Is it raining? Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, doesn't look good. But anyways, I watched this guy, young guy, pulled over on the side of the road watching this bird go to roost. He roosts right on the edge of the field, within eyesight of this guy's truck. And so it turned out he had permission to be there. I said, okay, go do your thing. I'll go somewhere else in the morning. And then I drove by there in the morning. He was parked on the side of the road within eyesight of where that bird roosts. And he walked in, I'm sure, on the edge of the field, because he doesn't have permission to be in the woods.
Right.
So And then, not surprisingly, his report was never heard the bird. But he did see a guy drive down the road. He probably had decoys out or something. Somebody drove down the road, saw his decoys, or maybe didn't, but for whatever reason, pulled into the neighboring property and sat in the hedgerow watching the field. So where I thought I was the only one, or me and my dad were the only ones that had permission here, there's 2 other guys now that are hunting that same field. Like, there's no wonder that bird's not gobbling. He's heard every call in the book, and including me. You know, I tried to get him to go the first morning I hunted him, and one of his hens popped out, which tells me I was probably too close. I mean, I wasn't so close that I spooked that hen, but only one hen came out, and he had 2 hens plus himself. They didn't show up, so maybe he did see me. I don't know, but we've definitely pressured that bird. The best thing we could do is leave him alone till Memorial Day weekend, and probably not call to him. You know, I wish I could, you know, mimic a spit and drum, but I even tried to fan that bird. The first time I saw him in that field, I showed him a full fan, and the hens left the field. The hens left the field, and he strutted a couple times. It didn't seem overly nervous, but as soon as I got that fan up, those hens left the field, and then he followed suit and just went with them. So, you know, if he won't come to decoys, he won't answer a call, and in the morning, he's not in that field in the mornings. He's only in there at night. So, but he's roosting there. You know, he's within close proximity to that field. So he's going to be a tough one. But I don't, like I said earlier, I don't necessarily plan on killing another bird this year. But that's not a fun one to take. I'm going to take some new people out the next few days, and you know, that's not the hunt I want to do. I want them to hear a turkey gobble, and I want them to experience the whole deal. You know, I don't want them to just sit on the edge of a field and wait for a bird that's not going to talk to come walking in. You know, that's not going to be right. So I can guarantee you we're going to put some miles on looking for some birds here the next few days.
Yeah. I'm hoping to head back to my original stomping grounds down at camp, because they seem to have showed up on Wednesday down there.
Cool.
So
you got cell cameras?
We got cell cameras, and me and my buddy took Wednesday off because the storm was supposed to come through earlier Friday, and Friday's my day off, and I was like, I'm going to swap that because it looked like hell on Friday. But today was actually pretty decent all day long.
Today was awesome.
But he was down there for roost on Wednesday, and he said they were going nuts. So awesome. I'm hoping we didn't bug them yesterday or this morning, and I'm hoping they'll be there tomorrow morning. So
cool.
I've been hunting with my buddy Michael there, trying to get him his first turkey, and we've just been striking out all over his place. So we're just I think he's gonna come down with me tomorrow, and we're gonna see if we can get him one down there.
Awesome. Well, I think Andrew said it before. I think the hunting's just going to get better from here on out. The last week of the season, it's my favorite time to hunt, no matter what. Low pressure, there's leaves on the trees. It's a little hard to hear birds, but when you hear them, they're a lot more willing to play the game for sure.
Oh yeah. So when you shoot the really good ones, is usually that last week. Not that some of them can't die in between, but some of the biggest birds I've seen killed are that last week.
Just real quick, Andrew, your second bird. What happened?
Second bird was a lot of fun. Second bird was first spot strikeout. Actually, no, sorry. It was a go around find birds for this week when I had my returning the favor to the guys that hooked us up in Colorado. They came out, and so I needed to find some birds in ASAP, and I was in a little bit of panic mode. But that morning, I located 3 birds before I hit the spot. And I hit the spot, and a bird gobbled down in this hemlock bottom. And it was one of them spots where I probably wouldn't have took those guys. It was kind of one of them deals where I can be in there, probably shouldn't be taking everybody and their brother in with me.
Yeah.
And I hit the bird. I saw a bird from the road, and I went in there, and as I was walking in there, he gobbled on his own. And I said, please keep gobbling so I don't even have to make a call, don't have to make a locator. And he kept gobbling on his own, just how I like it. And just let me keep putting the sneak on until I got that perfect setup. And set up, got my decoys where I wanted them, got the tree, and it was a turkey hunt. And I had a Rockstar 2-year-old, which I believe was just hammering. And I mean hammering. And I had some excited hen yelps in there, so then I got to mimic the hen, which is my favorite thing to do, because then I can just get it done on the mouth call and mimic, cut, mimic. In the meanwhile, while I'm cutting as hard as I hear, I just hearing this gobble over my cutting and the hen's cutting, and all of a sudden I hear this really mature bird to my left, just ha, and the really excited bird shut up, and I said, "Oh boy, what do we have here?" And I caught a glimpse of him doing the Velociraptor sprint down the bank with the snood telescoped in, just coming at me like a rhinoceros coming right down the bank. And I'm like, oh boy, here comes the gladiator into the arena. And he came behind the knob and it started the spit drum game. And that's where I fall apart, is when I hear the spit drum and I can't see it.
Oh, yeah.
That's where everything inside of me becomes very gelatiny and very like, oh, I can't handle this anymore. And it started at like the 80 mark, the 70 mark. And I know, and I put the decoys on a hump, and I knew the way he was approaching. I could see everywhere else except where he's approaching for that 20-degree window up to that knob. And the first thing I see is tail feathers at 20, and all of a sudden there's a snowball in between two hemlocks, and the tacticam tells the rest of it. And I didn't let much more than his waddles come up over that knob, and he was doing a backflip. The Joker got him. He got joked.
Not the juicer, the Joker.
No, joked him.
So what's the tally on the year for the juicer and the Joker?
The juicer's got the Deuce, and the Joker is got Trace. Trace
nice.
birds.
That's a good year.
But Alicia also uses the Joker. So she's got one. She got a bird on the second day. That was a Rockstar 2-year-old 9-o'clocker. Not much to tell on the story. Just heard him in the back, made a swing on him, set up, and had a hen lead in. And he did the 2-year-old Rockstar follow with gobble all the way in. And once he saw the decoy, he did a dirty all the way in and did the full show. And she anchored him. And honestly, that was the first bird I think I've never seen even wiggle once. I was like, hey, don't touch him right away. He might give you the spurs to you. I didn't know he's 2-year-old yet. And she went over there. She's like, I don't think he's moving at all. I don't think he's going to flop. And I'm like, she picks him up, and that thing was TSS stoned.
That's awesome.
I've been a part of I've 2 other reap birds that were pretty cool, though. The bird that got reaped the other day, he came charging in and got that on tacticam. That was really sweet. My buddy on the snow day, that was eyeglassed and watched and pretty much put him on a tree, and he lined up and reaped in on that one. These are all birds with hens. But I got on some fire-breathing dragons also that were just tearing it up. So I've got on 2 or 3 good goblin hunts now that were just absolute phenomenal. But finding the birds is just going to continue to be a struggle until they start coming into the green fields, which actually last 2 nights ago, Bri, they hit the green fields pretty good down here.
Good.
Wishing you luck, Jimmy. I think you're going to get her done. I'm feeling it for you.
It'll happen.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm excited for the next couple of weeks because we're going to get that warm weather. You get the bugs out. You get the birds a reason to be out in the field eating the bugs. And maybe we'll be able to see what's around a little more. Hopefully we'll be able to get some gobblers off of hens and see what's going on.
Yeah, we're starting to get some more tilled fields too, and the birds are definitely checking those tilled fields out and doing a cruise through, so that's helping to see some birds too on the edges. But I gotta say, I love your virtual man bun there. Every once in a while, when you tilt it, it's giving you a little manny back there.
I mean, the pixels here might make the back look a little longer than it is.
It looks like you're wearing a hairnet. It's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little Bob Ross.
You should have seen it today with the humidity. It was fantastic. So, hey, I really appreciate you guys' time. I know this is a long one, but I know you guys have done a lot of hunting together this year.
I wanted to kind of tie that all in together. And good luck moving forward. Appreciate the input on some of what's going on, thoughts and predictions. So we'll see what the next couple of weeks bring. I'm pretty excited to see what happens. We'll see how it plays out.
10-4. Send the full send. Keep reading them, bud.
Oh, I'm going to keep giving it to her.
Cool. Happy Friday.
Yep, you too, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks for having us on. Good luck.
Good luck, you guys.
Thanks for joining.